Christian has a call to lend a hand, to take a stand, to fight for justice in our land. The summer gives you the power to commit, to grow, to rise to the fore, to grab the future, to open new doors. In the summer, you have a voice. In the summer, you have a choice. The BCSX the place to make this world a better place. Politics and health, education, our wealth, a world that's clean, a world that's green. In the summer, we'll shape our dream. Yes, people's heart is in need of the hour. We'll renew our vision, fulfill our mission. With the faith of St. Paul in Christ who is risen. With the summer, you have a voice. In the summer, you have a choice. The BCSX the place to make this world a better place. We have a destiny with faith. We'll clinch the triumph of love over hate. The summer shows the way, committed to a better tomorrow today.
Being loss of jobs and loss of steady income. Employment sector is very weak and many white collar employees have now become perhaps dependent on Manrega. There may be many amongst us who are greatly affected but are timid to share our woes. Is entrepreneurship an answer? You may think, how can I be an entrepreneur when I know nothing about business? Friends, our position today is the same as that of the 12 apostles called by Jesus. But what transformation took place in them and through them to the world is history. We have the largest religion in the world today, and we are proud of it. The Holy Spirit can work wonders. Jesus knows best. As our guides, we have today two brilliant speakers who, despite being extremely busy, have accepted our request and agreed to share with us their thoughts and insights as our brothers on how entrepreneurship can be a vocation. While Raymond will educate us on why should we choose entrepreneurship as a vocation, Royston, with his expertise, would give us insight on finances available to start our own business. Both put together will give us the wisdom to decide what is best for us. The faculty today will be the biblical sower, sowing their seeds of knowledge and experience. However, whether we will be like seeds falling on the roadside, or on the stones, or on the decaying bushes, or on the fertile land, will depend largely on us. I am convinced that when we start believing that faith in God gives meaning and purpose to human life, that Earth's great treasure lies in human personality, and that brotherhood of man transcends the sovereignty of nations, we will be able to live up to our Sabha slogan to build a better tomorrow today and contribute to create a just society. I congratulate Vice President Lawrence Fernandez and his team of Training and Youth Affairs Forum of the Bombay Catholic Sabha for conceptualizing and organizing this webinar. I thank Alvin Furtado, our treasurer, for lending us a screen to organize this webinar. So, my dear friends, my dear principal office bearers, the distinguished past presidents of the Bombay Catholic Sabha, the executive committee members, central councillors of the Sabha, as also a host of participants from other organizations, come take full advantage of this webinar. Over to you, Lawrence, for further proceedings.
Thank you, Advocate Raphael. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Dolphy D'Souza, ex-president of the Bombay Catholic Sabha. So also Gordon D'Souza, ex-president. We welcome you, Gordon. We welcome you, Dolphy. Now we move on to the next part of this webinar. I would now like to call on Adrian Rosario to introduce Mr. Raymond D'Souza.
It's my privilege to welcome our speaker, Mr. Raymond D'Souza. He was a model seminarian and a respected and diligent professional who reached the peak of his employee career at a national level position at the group headquarters of one of India's most successful companies, and then was suddenly sacked after his next job switch. He was unemployed, confused, depressed, and lonely for several months. He went down physically, emotionally, spiritually, and subsequently financially, until he realized God wanted him to climb a different mountain. Realizing that if this can happen to him, it could happen to others too. This experience became the pivot point of his transition from a profession to a vocation. All of his past coalesced into a burning desire to irreversibly empower others who fall into the same boat, to elevate their game and move them to higher levels of professional and social contribution through commercial and social enterprises. He evolved as a trainer, facilitator, and business coach. Today, he is the only business coach in India offering 6 levels of progressive entrepreneurial growth and expansion to those committing themselves to his path of passion-based entrepreneurship. His uniqueness lies in his ability to handhold individuals to connect with their personal and financial flow and to build their personal net worth irrespective of external circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you Coach Raymond D'Souza.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for those very kind words. And audience, as you can see, that I too have been through a lot of difficulties, and I hope that resonates with you. And what I'm going to share with you are possibilities by which each one of us can actually see the opportunities in our lives and situation rather than the obstacles. So, Adrian, if you could
Alvin,
Alvin, if you can load my presentation, I will continue. So what I'm going to make you aware is that I'm going to speak on entrepreneurship as a vocation. So let's understand that there are 2 models in entrepreneurship. Alvin, you need to go to the first page and take the second slide. One model is called resource-based. Next page. Resource-based means I need something. Next page. And if I don't have that something, I am stuck. Now understand this. This is a model which most of us use to get into business only because we don't know of any other model. So if there is anything, any resource that you need, whether it is money, whether it is technology, infrastructure, space, anything. You don't have that particular thing, you end up getting stuck. And unfortunately, this is the only model we know to get into business. There is another model, and in that model, successful achievers have intuitively taken this model at some point in their life, and they realize they need nothing. They are unstoppable. Next, second difference in these two models is it has evolved from the industrial age and the information age. So like our educational system is 150 years old and not delivering the goods. The second model connects you to the age of connection and the age of consciousness. So as they say in Hindi, Zameen Asman ka farak hai. You can't really compare the two. Imagine the old landline, rotary phone, analog, with a cable connected to it, round dial, versus today's smartphone by which you can do so many different things. You can't really. Now imagine somebody talking to that person with the landline saying that this is what I'm offering you. Very difficult for that person to even believe that something like this exists. And that is what I'm going to do to you today to make you aware there is a simple, superior system, and that is what we will try and understand some part of it today. Third difference between this is that the resource-based model has no clear maps. You have no idea where you are, where you're going, and what you are doing. Failure is glorified in this system, next slide, as the only way to grow. The second model, crystal clear maps. Everything is codified. Protocols are spelled out. You look at any mature profession, whether it is medicine, engineering, anything. Protocols are very clearly spelled out. But in entrepreneurship, we are happily reinventing the wheel. So this is what we need to correct, that there is something superior existing, and that is what could actually help us make things easy. When I explained this wonderful system to somebody, he described it in just 2 words. He said, this is pure rationality, which means it all makes complete sense. Let's move ahead. So there is something called the professional paradigm, which we are all aware of, even though we may have not heard this term, because this term I have coined. The starting point for anybody who gets into a job or takes up a profession is competence. We build our resume. We build our qualifications that can go onto that resume. We build our experience, our skill sets, which we can put over there. So competence is the starting point for the profession paradigm. Please make a note of this. Second thing that we do is we focus on networking, making our connections. Who can get us a better deal? Who can help us to get a better job? Who can get us a better assignment? So networking becomes something very important. In addition, we would like to work according to our values. Very, very important for us. And these 3 become the fulcrum. So what is it in the professional paradigm? We focus on 3 things. What are they? Competence, networking, and our values. Let's go to the next. In the vocation paradigm, we focus on 3 completely different things. People who are highly successful or who are achieving things at a great scale, they don't work by the profession paradigm, they work with the vocation paradigm. And they focus on 3 completely different things. What are they? Their passions, their talent, and their purpose. Let's understand this step by step. Next, what are passions? So let's take a few minutes to really understand what are passions. Passions is an emotional compound. It is made up of two very intense and opposite emotions. One is love, what you want to do, what you love to do, positively directed. The other emotion is exactly opposite. It is about avoiding the pain in your life. So this is something we need to keep in mind. All those deprivations which you have had in childhood, which you have seen your family go through, you don't want to go through that again, and you don't want others to suffer like that. That becomes a powerful driver. When these two emotions come together, you have passion. In case this is still theoretical, let me share my own personal example. My dad, my father, worked in a government enterprise. And because of poverty, he had not been able to complete his education. He was a graduate. And because of that, he did not move ahead in his career. I am the eldest of three boys. I saw my father getting into small businesses to raise the standard of our living. And many of those small ventures failed. I saw him investing in small things, some land deal somewhere, something else. And in number of things, he got cheated. I'm not understanding anything, but I'm taking it in. My mother was a school teacher. She became a supervisor several times by rotation. Who have I become? A business coach who ensures people succeed in business by design, not by trial and error. And what am I offering? It is an educational program. So can you see how teaching and the struggle of succeeding in business, where it has come? I did not plan this journey, but some way or the other, this is who I have come to. And this is what you need to understand about pain. All that pain in your life, past and present, there is a meaning in it, and we need to understand why are we going through it. We may not understand it now, but at some point we will understand it later. So this is what is passion, and passion is a very powerful driver. Let's pause a moment and look at the difference between the two starting points. In the profession paradigm, starting point is competence. In the vocation paradigm, starting point is passion. Now, when the going gets tough, a person whose starting point is competence at some point will give up. But one who is passion driven cannot get off the train. There is something which just stops him or her. They just carry on. So when you are passion driven, perseverance is a natural consequence. Irrespective of the hardship, you find you are going on and on. This is a huge differentiator, and this is what you need to understand. When people are passion driven, they have staying power. Second part, okay, how do you recognize your passion? So one of the ways to recognize passion is, what will you pay others to let you do what you really want to do because you love it so much? Another way to recognize passion is, what is it that makes you jump out of bed? What is it that makes you alive? What is it that makes you lose track of time, food, drink, sleep when you're doing that kind of activity? Those are your passions. And this is what you need to learn to recognize. Next. Next is your talent. And this talent is very important because we refer to the biblical parable of talents. So each one of us has been given a natural talent. And on your screen, you will find a list of 12 natural talents. And each of these talents is a wealth creating talent. It is very important. You cannot choose this. You need to discern it. You need to recognize it within you, and you need to keep to it and follow it. What happens when you don't follow it? So let's look at an example. So on your screen, you will see this list of 12. So let's look at the third one, which is called starring or promoting. Okay. So let's take the example of Amitabh Bachchan. He's a star, and that is what I mean by starring. Okay. And this is what they also do when they are advertising. They are promoting some product or the other. So we call Amitabh Bachchan somebody who is a star profile. That is his natural path. So earlier, he had an image of an angry young man. As he aged, he had a series of flops. 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated. Amitabh Bachchan left films, changed his path, and joined politics to support Rajiv Gandhi. So he came to the next line, and that is in terms of leading and motivating people through politics. He became a political leader and lost his reputation in the Bofors scandal. In other words, by changing his path, becoming a political leader, he lost his wealth. He destroyed wealth. He again changed his path. Now he became a creator, and he created an organization. Number two, can you see that they are on either side of starring and promoting? He shifted once below and once above. So he created a company called ABCL, got down to running it himself, and went bankrupt, destroying a lot more wealth once again. Then came Kaun Banega Crorepati. He came back onto his natural path of starring and promoting, built back his wealth, built back his reputation, paid back everybody, richer than before. My friends, my brothers and sisters, this is the science behind this model. It has been codified by studying successful and unsuccessful billionaires. And it is a proven scientific system. Let's go further. Okay. Let's go back to the triangle, the vocation paradigm. So we have covered passions. No, we'll go back to slide number 7. Passions, talent, and the third thing is purpose. So in the professional paradigm, we are focusing on 3 things. What are they? Competence, networking, values. In the vocation paradigm, we focus on passions, talent, and purpose. Now, I explained to you with my own personal example about passion. In other words, we have not chosen our passions. It is God-given. We have not chosen our talent. That also is God-given. And we are here in this life for a purpose. That too is a God-given purpose. So in this paradigm, it is God through and through. God-given passions, God-given talent for a God-given purpose. This is why I call this the vocation paradigm. Let's go to slide number 11, the circle. So those 12, the 12 talents that you saw on the earlier thing, which were listed one below the other, they are just shown over here, how they actually form a circle around. And there is a science behind it. We will go through it some other time. Let's move ahead. Now we covered the profession paradigm and the vocation paradigm. How do you make a transition from the profession to the vocation? So let me share with you one more input. As we age, and cross the age of 40, at some point of our life, we go through what psychologists call the midlife crisis. What is the midlife crisis? The midlife crisis is when money stops becoming exciting. Material gains and progress no longer have that same excitement that it had before. We no longer look forward to being part of the rat race. We somewhere recognize that even if we win the race, we are going to be rats. And we want to step off that rat race. And this is where we want to do something more meaningful. We want to do something more substantial. And this is one of the ways by which we can make the transition from profession to vocation. A second way by which we can make this transition is many of us who have been in jobs and may not have a job any longer. This is another way to look at it, as to making a transition wherein you are making a living by making a difference. You can make a note of this line: making a living by making a difference. Next, so these are the ways by which you can do it. So how do you make the transition? In the profession paradigm, the starting point was competence. In today's world, competence is a commodity. You can be extremely competent and yet you may not be competitive enough in the workplace because there are so many others who are as qualified or as competent. So therefore, if you need to move ahead, you need to be an expert. Even if you're an expert in today's world, not good enough. So you need to be a niche expert. What does niche expert mean? Niche expert means you need to be the number one person in one niche. Anybody thinks of that niche, they think of you. This is what I mean by a niche expert. Is that good enough? Unfortunately, even that may not be good enough. Because you may be a niche expert, but you are not trusted. So you need to be a trusted niche expert. So instead of the word trusted, I'm using the word trustworthy, because trusted is what others think of you. Trustworthy is what you make of yourself by making yourself worthy of trust. Now, when trustworthy, niche, and expert come together in one term, we have something very formidable, because this person can be trusted. He's trustworthy. He is an expert and he has the knowledge by which others can lead and dominate that niche. This is what you need to. So you need to make the transition from just being competent to being a trustworthy niche expert. This is again a term I have coined. Believe me, if you are not a trustworthy niche expert, you are going to find the going tough. So use everything possible to become a trustworthy niche expert. This is very, very important, which means you start learning to say no. So when I reached and crossed the age of 40, at some point in my life, I suddenly realized that all that I knew and whoever I knew had brought me till here and could take me no further. It was a mind-boggling kind of a realization. I was completely shaken up. Suddenly you realize everything that you have invested in, everything that you know and all, may not be useful anymore. It is not going to add value to you moving ahead. All that I learned as a religious, 80-90% of things, all the management that I knew suddenly became irrelevant when I was stepping into entrepreneurship. And this is important to remember, that entrepreneurship is not management. And many of us don't realize this. We think because we have been good managers, we make for excellent entrepreneurs. No, they are two completely different fields. Let me give you an example. Management consultants were the ones who advised Amitabh Bachchan to start ABCL, and you saw the disaster. Again, management consultants advised Kingfisher Airlines to buy Deccan and Jet Airways to buy Sahara. What is the result? Bankruptcy. Please understand, managers will not understand entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is at a higher level. Entrepreneurs use higher managers. Entrepreneurs use management, but they are not the same. And when we don't differentiate this, we make expensive mistakes and we realize it only in hindsight. This is where having a competent business coach helps you to avoid these expensive mistakes because consultants will not be able to help you realize this. Second difference, second shift that you need to make is make the transition from fruitless networking. Why do I say that networking is fruitless? Because we are running from one networking activity to another, one network to another, one networking event to another. We remain where we are. Energy is expended, money is spent, but we don't seem to make progress. And this is why I say fruitless networking. So you need to make the transition to building your own personal uplifting network. We will look at this in more detail little later. Third transition you need to make is just from living your values, you need to actually examine your values and differentiate between which of them are principle based and which are not. Secondly, you also need to clarify them, sort them out in terms of whether they are allowing you to move ahead or not. Let me again share from my own personal experience. Being a not just a seminarian, but a religious who had taken the vow of poverty. Can you imagine what happened to me when I left the seminary, became a lay person, and had to earn money? I could not relate to money. I couldn't because subconsciously, unconsciously, there was a whole lot of value system which prevented me from making that connection. And many of us may be having this challenge. So this is where you need to examine your values. You need to examine your beliefs. In what way are they stumbling blocks for you? And you need to transform them into stepping stones. Let's move ahead. Okay, so in the resource-based model, you need money to begin. So let me share an example with you. There was a person who wanted to start a business and took me on as a coach before starting the business. So this is where I give my tagline. It is better to have a coach without a business than to have a business without a coach. Many of us will say, okay, let me first get everything done, then I will take on a coach. No, so understand how it made a difference in this particular situation. When this person took me on as a coach, he said, I need a company. I said, you don't need a company. I need employees. You don't need employees. I need an office. I said, you don't need an office. I need an accountant. I said, you don't need an accountant. You need a CA to help you file your returns. I need a place to keep my things. I said, you don't need your own place. So he went around, found a person, a bungalow with an abandoned garden. This person was in the environment business. She approached the owner. She said, if you let me keep my things, I will maintain your garden for free. What do you think the owner answered? Said, yes. What was the consequence? She got everything. Imagine, start of the business. She started as a proprietor, used a residential address to get a registration. She opened a current account and she had got started. Minimal overheads. Even if she does one single transaction in a month, she's profitable. This is the difference between the resource-based model and the resourcefulness-based model. So you begin not by investing money, but by investing your time. What do? You live your passion. So you need to know what your passions are. You need to live them. And you need to know what is your natural talent, and that is what you need to do. You need to invest more than 50% of your time living your passions and using your innate natural ability. That is when things will start happening for you. Until then, it will only be activity. Nothing will show. There won't be any change in your situation. But when you invest more and more of your time, when more than 50% of your time gets invested living your passion and through the living your natural ability, then what starts happening? People start noticing how enthusiastically you work. They start seeing your impact. Notice how much you are absorbed in what you are doing, how you are so connected with this. And this is where things will start moving. So these two things is about taking the right action. Take the next slide, number 14. Yeah, correct. That one where the strikeout words are there. Okay. So one of the things that you need to do to become a trustworthy niche expert, the previously where the strikeout words are. That's right. You need to drop what is not working. You need to recognize this is not giving me results. So you need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing what is no longer relevant for you. You also need to stop what is not taking you any further. Most importantly, you need to let go of your past. So imagine when there is some strong memories of the past that are holding you back. They are like chains around your leg. They are like the anchor of a ship which is let down. When that anchor is down, the ship cannot move ahead. Even the strongest of ships is stuck there because the anchors are holding it back. So you need to lift your anchors, let go of the past, and move ahead to create into your new future. Next. Yeah, so continuing where we are, how do you build your personal uplifting network? So I've already given you an example about getting a coach or a mentor. Second is, you need to differentiate between parasitic relationships and symbiotic or uplifting relationships. Many of us, because of our religious background, keep holding on to relationships that are draining us with respect to our time, our money, and our emotions. So if we are not able to differentiate this, we will not be able to reinvent ourselves and move ahead. Another thing we need to remember is that it is said that our personal net worth is the average of the net worth of our 5 closest friends. So there is a very strong correlation between who we are emotionally connected to and the amount of money that we are able to hold in our consciousness. If you want this to change, you need to again move to higher level relationships, and you need to do this consciously. So one small exercise I would like to give you at this stage. Let's just pause for a minute. Please write down who are the 5 closest friends you have and just estimate what their net worth is. And then see where you are. Is there a correlation between the average of the net worth of your 5 closest friends? Secondly, if you want to move ahead, suppose you want to move from unemployment to getting an assignment, to being self-employed. Do you have any friends who are self-employed? You need to think, because if they are all unemployed, you are all at the same level, you'll find it difficult to move ahead. So one of the ways, again, of choosing friends is, where do you want to be? Choose friends in that circle. Remember how parents would keep telling us, make friends with the smart boys or girls, make friends with those who are more academically oriented or who are good children. Same principle applies, but this was the unconscious reason, which now I'm making conscious to you. Next is spouse, and I put that in capitals. They say behind every successful man there is a woman, but I'm not referring to women who make men succeed. I am very clearly saying spouse. So for men it is their wives, and for women it is their husbands. I cannot tell you how important this is. When you have a supportive spouse, you can climb mountains, you can cross oceans, you can cross deserts. Everything becomes possible with a supportive spouse. Nothing is working, you are not getting any results, but only because of a supportive spouse you can make the impossible possible. What happens when it's the opposite? I don't need to elaborate. This is the very, very important thing. In my coaching, when a person hires me as a coach, I become the first person in his or her personal uplifting network. The second person I ensure is there is the spouse. That's how important this is. Third, then will be whoever are your business partners or whoever else you want to collaborate. Let's move ahead. Okay, so now I am correlating it how the two triangles come together. So you will have your God-given passions, God-given talent, and they are numbered. Can you see the steps? So these are the actions you need to take. Step number 1 and 2 is about doing the right actions. Is that clear? These are the right actions you need to take. Next is you will find you can go on taking the right amount of actions, but you are not getting desired results. Let's understand this. Imagine you are playing a team game, whether it is basketball, football, hockey, a right. So where was I in the last? Yeah, you're not getting desired results. So this is where you are playing a team game. Imagine you are there on the football pitch and nobody's passing the ball to you. Same thing happens in business. You are there, nobody is passing referrals to you, nobody is passing business to you, nobody is connecting with you. So trustworthy niche experts mean you need to be a trustworthy niche expert, and you need to have your own connections who are going on regularly giving you business. So you need to make the shift from networking to your personal uplifting network. And this is what it means. People who are helping you with the right connections. When you have these two, step number 3 and 4, you make the right connections. Step number 5 and 6 are your key anchors. So when you look at slide number 18, yeah, this one, you can see the previous one. You can see how the two paradigms come together. Yeah. And if you take the next slide, I've given it to you, taking the right actions, how you get traction, how it gives you attraction. Same words which I've already explained. Take the next. This is the last slide, and this is what is very important to the Bombay Catholic Sabha. These three things, action, traction, and attraction, these respective 2 steps at each point, connect you with 3 types of power. When you are alone and working on your own self, you have what is called as elected power. Elected power means you need to charge your own battery every single day. So every morning you get up, you need to motivate yourself. It is the weakest power. Next is now you are working with a team. So by working with others who are also positive, charged up and all that, when you work as a team, you have connected power. This is much more powerful. So when you die and you are operating from elected power, you are forgotten. Nobody remembers you. When you are operating from connected power, your family and those who have memories of you, you will live in their memories until they die. What happens at the third level? Third level is reflected power. This is where we study people in history. Who do we study? People who have long gone. We have never met them in person, but this is whom we study. Why? Because they have contributed to a cause. They have operated from there. So this is the most powerful. So when the Bombay Catholic Sabha is operating out of a cause which it is doing, you operate from reflected power. So this is another way to connect with the 6 steps. And with this, I bring to end my talk on entrepreneurship, a vocation, which is the last slide. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Coach Raymond. What we will do is, there may be questions participants may have. I request them to put it in the chat box. When you put it in the chat box, I request you to just mention to which speaker the question is addressed to, so that we may be able to get a proper response. I now again would like to invite Adrian Rosario to introduce to us the next speaker. Mr. Raymond, you may please hold on.
Sure.
Thank you. Adrian, please join.
Great. It's my privilege to now introduce our second speaker, Royston Braganza. Royston joined Grameen Capital in 2007 to launch the organization as its Chief Executive Officer, CEO. He currently oversees all aspects of Grameen Capital's operations in India. Grameen Capital, founded by Grameen Foundation USA, the IFMR Trust and Citigroup, is a first of its kind social business that enables microfinance institutions and social enterprises wider access to the global markets. Grameen Capital is part of the global Grameen family of companies, the flagship of which is the Nobel Prize winning Grameen Bank, founded by Professor Mohammad Yunus. To realize his dream of a capital with a conscience ecosystem, Royston Braganza, along with Grameen Capital, recently promoted Grameen Impact Investments India, a unique vehicle to provide debt financing to social enterprises across a multiple number of sectors such as affordable education and skill development, affordable healthcare, clean energy and innovation, agriculture, financial inclusion, and livelihoods. He has been in his previous assignments a senior vice president with HSBC, where he was instrumental in setting up HSBC's microfinance and priority sector business. Earlier than that, he was head of the SME business at HSBC. Before joining HSBC, Royston has worked in Citibank India for over 8 years in various assignments, both across the consumer bank and the corporate bank. There's a whole list of his current achievements. He's been the former chair of Sadhan, whose members have over 30 million women micro entrepreneurs. He serves on a variety of boards and advisory bodies, including Grameen Foundation India, Inclusive Business Action Network, IBAN, FICCI Financial Inclusion Committee, CII National Committee on NBFCs, the United Nations Microfinance Resource Group, Impact Investors Council, and the Banking and Finance Committee of the Indian Merchant Chambers. He has been invited to address various programs in India and globally to promote impact investment and blended finance as a sustainable tool to eradicate poverty and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. In September 2018, Royston addressed a high-level event at the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York on the Sustainable Development Goals. The London-based finance monthly publication named Royston in its 2013 Global CEO Award winners list as one of the top 4 CEOs in Asia and the top 2 in India, the other one being Kumar Mangalam Birla. He has also been awarded the Global CSR Leadership Award by World CSR Congress and the Power of One Award by the Archdiocese of Bombay. Royston completed his Masters in Management Studies from the prestigious Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. We welcome Royston Braganza.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
Those of you who have less time for question and answers can blame that introduction. It's a pleasure being here, and just want to first check whether you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
I can see a thumbs up from Lawrence.
Yeah, we can.
Fire.
Yes.
So that's good. The power of one actually is from the Bombay Catholic Sabha, so there is a history and a relationship there as well. So it's a pleasure being here as part of the team to share with you our insights. With that, and without any further ado, let me go straight into. Can you also see the slide that I've shared?
Yeah, we can.
Excellent. One more slide, Lawrence. Can you see the next transition?
Yeah, viability of project, and yeah, we got to the next slide. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about today entrepreneurship, funding, viability, and how we are situated within the context of the environment right now. We'll take about 22 minutes and try and complete this within that time. So it's going to be a quick roller coaster in a sense. But I think the world we are living in right now is a roller coaster, and this line paraphrases it quite well. There are decades in which nothing happens, and then there are weeks in which decades happen. And we seem to be in those weeks right now. And there is so much happening, there is so much of change, there is so much of sort of paradigms that are shifting that it gives us a whole lot of challenges, but an even larger amount of opportunities. And in that, therefore, the way that I want to take the next 20, 25 minutes is to talk about what's happening in the global context. What are the opportunities for an entrepreneur? How are the different funding paradigms playing out currently? Are there any lessons that the COVID crisis is teaching us? And how is social entrepreneurship another option for entrepreneurs to look at? It's a lot of ground. I'm going to talk fast. If you can't hear me, try and signal to me through Bento or through Rafael or through Lawrence and let me know. But if I'm going forward and without hearing anything, I'm assuming that you can hear me. So one of the terms that most economists clearly agree on is that we're living in a VUCA world. Everything around us seems to be volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And irrespective of where we look, there is great change happening. How does an entrepreneur evolve, start, reposition in that context? When everything is changing, every moment there is a change. And therefore, terms that we had not heard of 4 months ago suddenly have become the local jargon. Social distancing, quarantine, isolation, flattening the curve. All of these are terms that show us that so much can change in so short a time. As an entrepreneur, when I was looking at some of the data, till 10 years ago, some of the main companies that exist today, whether you talk Uber, whether you talk Ola, whether you talk Airbnb, all of these didn't even exist. So how much can change in a short period of time is both a cause for concern, but it's equally a cause for great excitement. Because as Raymond told us, it's about deciding, it's about choosing to be resourceful and saying, what's gone behind, be the past, but let me focus on the present and what lies ahead. St. Paul said that as well when he writes, that I press on towards my goal and I move forward. And I think that's the spirit in which Bombay Catholic Sabha is hosting this event. That's the spirit of hope that I'm sort of here to share with you this evening as well. And I appreciate all of you, 98 people at this time on a Saturday when you could have been enjoying the rain with a bhajas and chai, are here to look at the economy and what are the opportunities. So thank you for being here. Clearly the temperature is rising. We've crossed 1 million cases. To my mind, and I think most of you will agree, India is yet to peak. The curve is yet to flatten. The lockdown had its limited success. The reopening has not flattened the curve. In fact, it's sort of jumping back again. We're going into further lockdowns because of that. And we estimate about a 2 lakh crore loss a week every time we lock down. So it's a fine line. It's a sort of tightrope balance between locking down, reopening, the economic cost versus the health cost. Can these two even be equated? What's the way forward? That's the sort of volatility that is surrounding us. In terms of the complexity, we are looking at a very complex global economic environment. $5 trillion likely to shrink. Everyone's talking about a V-shaped recovery, unlikely to be a V-shaped recovery. It could be at least a year long, if not longer, probably a U-shape, probably an L-shape, even likely to be an S-shape, where you see a dip and then you see a spurt again during the winter. So all of these are estimates that the global economists are indicating. The geopolitical implications of this are pretty significant. And as an entrepreneur, you're looking at what's going to happen to China? What's going to happen to opportunities that the Chinese businessmen had? Is that going to come south? We're already seeing a lot of it move to Vietnam, to Indonesia. Is that going to come to India? Can I reposition my business to look at global demand that was going to China now coming to India? Is there an opportunity that I'm missing? Is there an opportunity that I need to grab in the way I'm planning my business in the light of this multipolar world that seems to be opening up? Today it was a unipolar world. The US dollar is the hegemon globally. Is that going to change? Are we on the cusp of a third world war? This is for another 1 hour presentation. At some time we should do this, but probably experts feel that we are already in a third world war. What has happened when there's a war? There is death and there is economic disaster. We're already seeing death and economic disaster. Who has caused this war? The jury is still out. Is the war really on without us knowing it? I mean, it depends on whether you want to listen to a conspiracy theory or an economist, but clearly the effects of a third world war are playing out as we speak. In the domestic context, again, the IFC released and World Bank released their data a few days ago. India is looking at a negative growth rate. We're likely to see minus 3% GDP. And that's really something that's going to take at least a year or two to recover. So the impact of that on existing businesses, on new businesses, is going to be significant. Having said that, the RBI has come up with many programs as well, both in terms of policy rates, in terms of the funding, in terms of guarantees. And so there is really flush with funds, bank liquidity, but not enough lending. How do we mix those two? When is that going to unlock? When are the floodgates going to open? I think the next 3 months are very, very critical to see whether that funding is going to open up for the domestic sector. I'll just pause again for a minute. Lawrence, am I too fast, too slow? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, excellent.
Yeah.
Go forward. What are the sectors where the challenges are? I don't think the slide is going to be clear on the top, so I'm going to read it out. The challenging sectors, as we know, are aviation, tourism, hospitality, transport. These are going to be big challenges in the sector. We're seeing that in terms of the airline industry and the hotel industry, in terms of those sectors. On the right-hand side, healthcare and pharmaceutical likely to go through the roof. Real good opportunity there. Agriculture, horticulture, again, big opportunities. And in the middle, you have a mixed bag: IT, telecom, consumer durable, automobiles, financial services. So those are broadly, as we paint a context canvas, the sectors where we're going to see some pain, we're going to see some improvements, we're going to see immediate opportunity. So if your businesses lie in each of these sectors, it gives you a little bit of a window into how you're going to plan for funding these businesses. If you're in the red zone in these slides, then funding is going to be extremely difficult. If you're in the green areas, likely to see funding come your way. If you're going to be in the middle orange yellow areas, wait and watch. So that seems to be broadly where this is panning out in terms of businesses. So that's the context if you had a business. There's going to be a shrinking both of demand and supply. We're going to see, the return to normalcy going to take time, both in terms of labor, in terms of cash flows, in terms of demand. And therefore, there is a near certainty of a negative GDP growth rate. The sense that this, as I said earlier, could take about 12 months to 18 months at the very least to sort of bounce back is therefore something that should also make us more patient, but also be realistic about where the economy is going to open up from and by when. Coming now to the entrepreneurship modeling. In terms of business cycles, whether you're restarting your business, post the lockdown, whether you're reinventing your business model, or whether you decide, as Raymond gave you those really interesting triangles and a mapping. If you feel that this is the time now for me, whether it's because of a job loss or because of a career opportunity or a transition phase that you're in, to start a business, then this is really the path for that. I mean, the creation of an idea, planning whether there's really a demand, is there a gap, is there a niche, as he mentioned, what's the strategy to be able to focus on that niche, how should I be marketing myself in that niche, how do I raise the finance, and we'll talk in the next few slides about what is the finance available, what are the opportunities for finance, and then how do I realize that dream and meet with success. So that's really the journey of an entrepreneur. But this is not a one-time journey. Within your entrepreneurship ecosystem, within your model, within your business function itself, it's cyclical. So there are moments where you need to come up with a new idea and a new strategy and a new marketing approach, fresh finance, and that's where clarity of vision and purpose is critical, and the ability to go on and just keep going on. And in that context, let's talk about some of the financing opportunities that are there for an entrepreneur. So as you start out in an early stage, you are bound to see there being initial losses, whether it's going to take time to break even, and then you start getting on cash break even, and then you start getting into net profit, and then you reach a certain maturity cycle and decline. Now, each of these stages, there is different types of capital. In the launch stage, there's a different type of capital. In the growth stage, there's a different type of capital. And in the mature stage, there is a different type of capital. So the initial stage of funding, we call it the three Fs, often called friends, families, and fools, who take a call on you, who bet on you earlier on in your journey. And that's really the journey of the valley of death. Psalm 23 talks about, even though I walk in the valley of death, you are with me. So the Lord we know is with us. But about 80% of new businesses have a mortality rate. And therefore, it's very high mortality rate in the early stage, or the angel or the seed stage of a company. So it doesn't mean that you are a failure. I think one of the big things that the last decade has taught us, especially around the IT boom and the many unicorns that we are seeing globally, is that there are a bunch of failures, and then there are some hits which go out of the park, and those become the unicorns, billion-dollar valuations, WeWorks and Ubers and Teslas and Netflix and all of them, and Lyft and Ola and the many companies that we have in India as well, Flipkart and Amazon. Globally, they're called the FANG stocks, F-A-N-G, which is a bit scary because it's like a snake. But you have Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. The four FANG stocks. Some people use Apple instead of Amazon, but those are the four stocks that sort of got their fangs into the economy. And if one of them, sort of gets into you, you're hooked for life. And therefore, that stage of the early mortality stage is the most critical. How do we find the belief in self? How do we find the funding? Because belief in self is one thing, but getting the funding at the right time is also equally important. But one of the points I want to make here before I move to the next slide is one of the important aspects in the last 10 years is this thing of failing fast. If you need to fail, there's nothing wrong with it, but fail fast so that you can move to improving, move to the next idea, because then you give it a shot to be able to test it and then fail fast. If you keep prolonging and thinking, no, it'll improve, and then, without really taking enough of expert guidance around, there is a risk that there will be burnout and you will give up. So how do we plan these, whether it's the early stage funding from angel investors or, a Series A or Series B or a Series C equity round or a mezzanine structure or going into an IPO, all of these have different characteristics in terms of fundraising. Let's focus for today's session only on the early stage. which is the pre-seed, seed, and early stage of companies. I think a lot of people listening to this presentation are either starting up their own businesses or trying to evaluate whether I should be starting a new business. And hopefully Raymond has inspired you to start a new business or to think about starting it at least. And therefore, where does this funding come from? Does it come from your own savings? Does it come from friends? And I saw a question on the chat saying, if I have no friends, does it mean that I have no money to start a business? Should I not become an entrepreneur? And the answer there is that there are a bunch of angel networks and individual investors who are very keen to invest in this business. Let's see the pros and cons of each of these. If you are looking at setting up your own company with your own money, of course, then it's high equity for you. Your vision and focus is the only thing that matters. No one to interfere with your vision and focus. You have a free hand in running the way you want. But what are the cons? You don't have deep pockets maybe enough. And as soon as you run out of money, you stop. It's called being dead on the vine. That there is no way to further accelerate your business. And you don't have further investors to back you in terms of growth. What about family and friends? Of course, they're more patient. They don't interfere much because they trust you. Raymond talked about the spouse and the friends as being critical in your business journey. And therefore, the backing that they give you is critical. It's also likely to be cheaper than formal sources of capital because they're doing it more to support you to grow and, of course, to share in the upside. But there's no immediate pressure or demand in terms of that funding. Having said that, they may not be financially savvy enough. So if you are making mistakes, they may not help you to correct. They may be more interested in the relationship and then scared to correct you. And then that could be detrimental in the long run because it may not be successful. You may not be sustainable. What happens if the company shuts? Can you ruin a personal relationship? Do they have deep pockets enough to sustain you? So these are the two areas of friends and family or self. Angel investors are specialized investors who come in at the early stage. So by design, they come in with small amounts of money, but they invest in a vast number of companies. And they play the probability curve where they know that there's going to be a high mortality rate, but they also know that there are going to be one or two that's going to give them returns which are hit out of the park returns. And therefore, they're in it for those one or two big returns, and that could be you. So they are there, they have constant support, they have great insights in terms of business strategy, execution, access to wider funding, to peers, they can invest in subsequent rounds. Other investors, commercial investors follow on when there's an angel investor of repute. And so that is really an opportunity probably to look at. One of the things Rafael and maybe the Bombay Catholic Sabha or even the church in the Archdiocese of Bombay should look at is to create an angel fund for investing in Christian entrepreneurs. Where seed investing, and I'm happy to have a separate discussion, with Rafael and the team of how do we approach this and maybe go to the Cardinal and put a proposal saying a lot of our Christians are talented, are skilled, but don't have the initial seed funding. Is there a way that the church can provide the initial seed capital as angel investors to be able to support these? And there can be a team of an investment committee who does this on a daily basis, on day in and day out, to see business plans, business cases, to be able to select a few. And that could be really our contribution to the community at this time of COVID, when we expect tens of thousands of people to lose their jobs, and a lot of our community people, right from the time the recession is much before COVID. We were already going through an economic slowdown. Much as we say that the COVID illness hits those which have pre-existing conditions or pre-morbidity conditions, the same as hit the economy. It was already having a pre-existing condition. It was already with morbidity. And so in some ways, the comorbidity is happening with COVID. And therefore, can we encourage our youngsters? In Singapore, in fact, has something called the regulatory sandbox, where everyone who graduates from college who says, I want to become an entrepreneur, without any questions asked, is given 100,000 Singapore dollars to say, put this in place, start your business. The Delhi government under Kejriwal is trying that in schools, saying we will give you 5,000 rupees to every school child who says, I want to become an entrepreneur. whether you want to start a lemonade stall where you make nimbu pani, whether you want to start, cleaning and greening your environment and collecting some funds for that, it's possible. And as part, the Bombay Catholic Sabha has awards for each of its units, and social activity and activism. Maybe a good idea to talk about one or two entrepreneurs in the community who can be promoted, supported as part of building that. And Raphael and I are part of the social apostolate with Bishop Alvin, so we can also bring that up there and find out how the community can take on much more entrepreneurial roles as the time sort of unfolds and the pain of the job crisis post-COVID really hits people. And therefore, some of the names of these impact or the angel investors, you can take a screenshot of this or take them down because these slides are proprietary, so I won't be able to share the slides. But there are a bunch, and you can Google and find all of this data. All of these data, the sources put, or you can just Google the top angel investors in India. But it gives you a sense of who are the investors and where is this funding coming from. Just in the last 6 days, this much of capital has been raised in terms of Series A, Series B, and C. So to show you that even though there is a global slowdown, there is no shortage of money. The slowdown is because people are wondering how it's going to open up. But the funds are there. Banks have the funds, equity investors have the funds, and therefore creating the right idea, business plan, putting the right niche that you are going to be known for. And I like that point that Raymond talked about, becoming the go-to person for that. Anyone who needs, wedding dresses for a Catholic wedding goes to Mrs. Fernandez. That should be your niche, that you then, raise a seed fund, make it Fernandez and Company, create a bridal dress company, or create a catering business. COVID is going to bring a lot of need for clean food and safe food. So is that coming from a planned system? And therefore, I want to summarize by the last 5 minutes of what are the lessons for COVID for an entrepreneur. And I put it in an acronym called POWER, because I think that in this time when everyone seems to be getting hopeless, the Holy Spirit in Acts 1:8 says you will be filled with power. And Raphael, in the opening prayer and, including in your anthem, you talk about the Holy Spirit providing the strength. And so that strength comes from putting God first. I think no other principle, whether you're an entrepreneur or an activist or an employee or just a human being, works better than Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added. They may not be added how you want, in the order you want, in the time frame you want, but it will be added, which is for your best. So that is the assurance, that is our faith, that Jeremiah 29:11, that I know the plans that I have for you for your success and not for your destruction. So put God first. There is time. Many of us are locked down. Many of us are still working from home. If we've not started praying in the lockdown, the problem is with us. We don't have any excuse of time anymore. So I would urge you, spend, even if it is 5 minutes of prayer a day, if you've never been praying, just be quiet in the Lord's presence. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you in your entrepreneurial or your career journey. The second is to look for opportunities. Where are they coming from in the COVID time? Healthcare, education technology, agriculture, sanitation. These are going to be hugely important in the next 12 months. So if you have an existing business, how can I build it in these areas? If you have a business that's not in these areas, how can I look at maybe expanding into areas that are COVID positive, beneficial? So don't just force fit it, but just look for opportunities and you may find them. We're seeing in terms of trends due to COVID, people are buying more, but they are buying in bulk, but they are buying cheaper. The focus is on cure and now prevention. Fewer shopping trips, buying just in time. So people are, going to the neighborhood kirana. They're doing more at home. Carom boards and Ludo sets have jumped up by 300x on Amazon. People are doing more gardening. People are doing more sports and yoga at home. So our Catholic youngsters who are good in music, can they do something online? Those who are good in dance, can they do some dance tutorials? Can you set up a company for home fitness that people can download or watch you every day and do? So there are entrepreneurial opportunities that are going to open up in media, in the workplace, in travel, in education, in branding. Constantly keep your eyes and ears open to find what are these trends. But equally important is to pause and don't get panicky. Don't worry, tomorrow expect something to open up. Give yourself 3 months time, otherwise I'll get depressed. We know the pain is going to be for 6 months. So if you need to tighten your tighten your belts for that period of time and know that it's going to be longer than normal, then you need to do that. And the Ikigai matches in some ways the purpose that Raymond talked about. What is my purpose? Doing what I love, doing what I'm good at, doing what the world needs, and doing what I can get paid for. This is a famous Japanese concept. It's become a rage currently in the self-help sections of the bestsellers. It's worth identifying and reflecting. Whether you use Ikigai, whether you use the Jesuit Ignatian retreat principle or the examine of consciousness, or just spending time in prayer, allow yourself to not get sucked into depression. Don't get anxious, don't get depressed, and allow yourself to be able to strengthen yourself mentally. The ecosystem mindset is, how do I build out an ecosystem? In Grameen, we have a debt company, an investment advisory company. We want to set up an equity fund, a social stock exchange. So how do we create the ecosystem to work for us? Rather than me trying to succeed, how do I get everyone along to succeed? And then finally, repositioning. Everything seems to be today online. Shopping, movies, mail, meeting, relaxing, everything has the same posture we have for everything. Whether we're attending mass also, we are in the same place in front of the screen. So it's become our pattern. How are we called to reposition ourselves? This is my own brother. Tonight, in fact, is his 100th show. From the day of the lockdown, he is a musician who used to travel across the country, across the world singing. And then from the day of the lockdown, he launched an online music hour. Tonight, it's from 9 o'clock. Encourage you all to log in. You can just search Carlton Braganza on Facebook and you will find it. But today is his 100th show. The fact that we can create new business models, new possibilities, new opportunities from nothing, thanks to technology, is a huge encouragement for us. I mean, you have Sunil Gavaskar there who's watched it, Rajneet Sardesai, Shobha Desh, Azharuddin. So people, are repositioning themselves in a very powerful way. And I want to end with the last bit on social entrepreneurship. This is again an opportunity that's available. There is $2.5 trillion a year available for social entrepreneurship. To find it, I mean, in your Catholic Sabha anthem, I noted these words which were very interesting. It said, we are here to lend a hand and we are here to make the world a better place. And therefore, how do we find this funding even for social entrepreneurship? If I want to set up a company, it's not only about making money, it's about doing good. And Raymond made you take down a line. I'm also going to make you take down a line. It says you can do well and do good at the same time. You don't need to do either. You can do both together. You can do well, but also do good at the same time. And therefore, and there are examples here. Narayan Hridayalaya started, heart operations at nominal rates. Equitas, Ujjivan, Vision World, Vision Springs. Many of these have now become social enterprises, mainstream banks with IPOs, and have gone to huge scale. The organization I chair had 32 million clients 2 years ago when I finished my term. It's now 52 million clients. We grew it up from less than 1 million. So the ability for us to build scale at the bottom of the pyramid in India is enormous. We need to be the ones giving the world hope to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan. Very insightful presentation. and we will definitely, as a POB, as a Sabha, we will take up the key points which were mentioned by you, including seed funding and how to guide the young entrepreneurs of this age. We now are open for Q&A. Like I had said previously, there is a small chat box at the bottom of your page. We have, let us say, another 10 minutes or so for Q&A. If you have a question, you may please key in. We already have a couple of them. And this question is addressed for Coach Raymond. It is addressed by Anthony Dias, the first one. He says that when you have natural talents and people try to grab, when you have natural talents and people try by crab mentality to pull you down, how do you handle it?
So I've already mentioned, Anthony, that be clear about the differentiate between parasitic relationships and symbiotic relationships. Be clear about parasitic relationships and symbiotic relationships. Can you hear me, Lawrence?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is what you need to differentiate. So if you realize that certain people around you have a crab mentality, you need to move away from them. That is the only way. Second is, you need to insulate yourself. So even if they are around you, don't let it affect you. So you can only do that if you are emotionally and mentally stronger. Lawrence, you want me to quickly run through the other questions since I made a note of them from the chat box?
Please. Please.
Okay. So next is, what if I have no friends? Can I be an entrepreneur? Yes, you can be an entrepreneur, but you need somebody who can provide that guidance to you, and that person needs to be compatible with you. So how can small businesses survive, even especially when government is helping big businesses post GST, etc.? It is very easy for small businesses to survive if you get your process right. What is that process? One is you need to have a very clear and unique selling proposition, which the market wants. So you have to be clear what is your most valuable offering to the market and what is it that the market values from there. Second, you need to have your ideal customer, somebody who will buy what you have offering at your price. Muh mangi rakam. When you have a match like this, you have an ideal transaction. And then you build your business model accordingly. The process is simple, but actually putting into practice is where the difficulty is. And when you get that right, you find that cash flows on an ongoing basis. Another question is about difference between job and business or entrepreneurship. In job, you get a regular income. When you have your own business, you pay everybody else. If something remains, then you get it. So you jump from the frying pan into the fire. That is what business is. Second is, in job, your core value is security. You are looking for your monthly pay. In business, your core value is satisfaction. In entrepreneurship, the core value is freedom. So there are three different things. When I say business and entrepreneurship, business is small business, not scalable. Entrepreneurship is a scalable business. Last question is difference between fixed cost, variable cost. It was about actually fixed salary and variable salary. So you need to understand, when you are paying a salary to somebody, it's a fixed cost. When you are paying rent, it is a fixed cost. So when you have a fixed cost, it means even when you don't get income, even if you don't have business, even when there is no profit, you have to make the payment. So this is what you need to be careful of. So one of the ways to start a small business and to keep your overheads down is to build your network rather than to build your team. When you build a team, you have employees. But if you have a network, you have a lot of people who can give you support without being a cost to you. Again, this is something that you need to learn. We can handhold you on this. Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let me take the next set.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a few and then hand it back to you, Lawrence. So let me go to, cool. So Gordon has asked, the GDP is going down. How come the Sensex is going up? So there are, there are three reasons. The first is, of course, the Sensex has its own mind, but I'm trying to just give you some serious economic answers. One is there is flush with liquidity. About $8 trillion has been printed in the last 3 months. So whether you take the US, which has printed about $5 trillion and pumped it in, the European Union, which has printed 3 trillion, the Japanese who have printed $1 trillion. And so across the world, people are pumping money in to be able to change the narrative and to not let the businesses fall. There are two risks. One is that is extremely myopic because the eye is on the election, at least in the US case. And the eye is on keeping the EU intact in terms of the European Union. The risk is what they call ghost companies, that companies who are surviving, who are actually dead but surviving because of infused liquidity. The moment you take them off the ventilator, they will die. Right now, artificially money is being printed and pumped into those companies, and so they are alive. So in the US, every month you get a check from the government to pay the salaries, you get a check from the government to pay the rent, you get a check from the government. So it's literally on life support, but they are hoping that there will be a vaccine, things will come back to normal, and then when you come out of the coma in that sense, you're normal and the world around you is normal. If that doesn't happen, if Trump loses the election, if all of those, there could be an issue. And because of that liquidity, all the stock markets around the world are being bumped up. The second is the cost of oil. Oil went to a negative, so people were paying you to buy oil. That was the situation in the oil futures market because of the aviation fuel coming to a standstill and because of Saudi having to push up its drilling of oil and producing of oil to meet its fixed costs. There was a huge glut of oil. And finally, on the Indian market, markets have already factored the downturn. They are actually now looking at 22, 23, saying that if businesses of China come to India, then can this really boost the Indian companies? So the Indian companies are riding on the back of, can India replace China? Can that be the future? Let's get in now at the right time before the market really takes off and India becomes a superpower. Right or wrong, not for me to answer right now. The next question from Sebastian: what are the factors for angel investors after you have the new idea? There are 4 or 5 factors. The first is they will look at what is your revenue model? What are your cash flows going to be? What are your fixed costs? What are your variable costs? And what is the rate of valuation that you're giving them so that you can give stake in the company? So how much are you diluting for how much? And once you've decided that, so if you look at Shark Tank or look at these series, and maybe Rafael, another idea for you is to have a Bombay Catholic Sabha Shark Tank where entrepreneurs come and present their business case, and we can create a panel of evaluators to say, and it's not so much to find fault with the business plan, but actually mentor people to make a better business plan, to make a better case for their business. So if you watch a Shark Tank episode, you will get all of that. When are my cash flows? What are my fixed demands? When are my costs going to come down? When am I going to automate? And when am I going to cash break even? So it's an excellent question, Sebastian, that it's not just a good idea. It's also important to see how are you going to break even? What are your cash flows? And how are you going to build scale? In the tribal areas, how are we going to look at a post-pandemic? What are the options that are there? And I'll give you one example and then I'll stop because it covers both the next 2 questions. It says, look at about maybe 80 million migrants have started moving back. Possibly about 60 million will come back to the cities. Already the trains out of Bihar are now full. Earlier it was only into Bihar were full. Now already the trains out of Bihar are full because Bihar numbers are jumping. People are saying we might as well go back to the city where the numbers have started stabilizing. But 20 million will stay on in their cities, whether it's Orissa, whether it's rural Maharashtra and other places. These are going to be a huge pressure because these were mouths additional to feed in the villages. At the same time, these were the same people who were sending money to the villages when they were working in city. So it's a double whammy in the village. More people to feed and no money coming in. Can we create businesses for villagers in the villages? Say digging a farm pond. So you capture the rainwater, you create an irrigation solution, you create a shrimp farming solution, you create possible, 130% IRRs. If you look at the farm ponds today, you can get Narega to pay for your labor. You can actually find a model which uses government policies to fund your rural model in that sense. So I think while a lot of us on this call are focused on Mumbai, focused on the urban areas, there is a huge opportunity in the Indian rural space. It needs you to decide to shake off your comfort zone and focus on the rural area. But I think that the Catholic community has a huge opportunity because we have a social heart, because we have the values of the gospel. We are keen to bring people out of poverty. There are huge opportunities in education, in healthcare, in food processing, in the villages that are available to us. And now with technology, with data being available, online being available, let's not look at just the cities. Let's look at the world as our oyster.
Yeah.
Do I take more or should I stop?
Yeah. I think, is there any more? We have one more question here. It says that in this competitive world, how can we stay as a self-employed or entrepreneur in this pandemic situation or period?
Ecosystem. So if you look at the power acronym, the word E, find which part of the ecosystem what you are doing, self-employed or entrepreneur, is contributing. Are you in the wrong ecosystem? Are you in the aviation ecosystem? Then you're going to be in pain. That's what the numbers and the forecast seem to say. So plug into an ecosystem that is doing well. Because when the ecosystem survives and thrives, you will survive and thrive. If the ecosystem dies, you will die. So it's important to check, am I in the right ecosystem? And then plug into that ecosystem. So if you need to reorient your business, if you need to turn around your strategy to focus on an ecosystem that is showing positive trends, then this is it. Someone has asked me about stocks and investing in Ujjivan Narayanadalai. That's not my to provide on this chat. You can read and do fundamental research, equity research, and do analysis on the companies and take your own investing decisions. But I would invest in you as an individual. You make sure that you are optimizing your potential.
Okay, there's one last question, which is how do you get sales generated in this pandemic era for business?
It depends what's your line of business. I've been saying, if I look out of my window, I can see new birds that are there on the tree that I've never seen before. I can see, more greenery because of the rain. I can see 4 or 5 watchmen outside the different neighboring buildings. Now, 3 business models straight away come to mind. One is, can I do small visuals or clips or YouTube videos on birds and say, these are the new birds I'm seeing. People are seeing new birds, add those pictures and create a whole momentum around birds and these new flora and fauna that are popping up. Or I can see new trees and say, goal 7 of the SDG goals, talking about sustainability, talking about clean energy, talking about improving carbon sequestering, talking about green cover. Is there a way I can create a business around green, around greening up the environment around me, about creating more trees? And then looking at the watchmen outside, who is giving them food? Where are they buying? Can I create a dabba service that is now for, the lower strata of society? Because they are also worried about going out, shops are closed. So there are business models and opportunities everywhere you look. It is about being attuned to find the right one, being open to the Holy Spirit to prompt you, and then having, the tenacity to stick with that plan.
Yeah. Thank you, Royston. Lots of insights and words of wisdom. Coach Raymond, do you have maybe a line or maybe a 1 minute to give us as an advice to the youth who are here in this session?
Yeah. You have to look at being useful to those around you. So Royston has been pointing, you just look outside and he's giving examples of greenery, etc. and all that. So it is not about looking with physical eyes. It is about looking with your mind. So it is your mind that sees opportunities in what you physically see. And this is called business acumen and you need to develop it. It is like this. You watch a game like football and you are able to understand what is happening. But you watch another game which you don't know. You will not know what is happening. So this is what you need to start recognizing what is happening in the world of business, in the world of economic, what is economic activity. So when you develop that equity, you start seeing it and you start recognizing it. Otherwise, you're only seeing it, but you're not able to connect with it. So as you develop business acumen, you find that you are able to move up in this area of wealth creation. That is what you need to develop.
Thank you,
Evan,
Coach
yeah.
Raymond.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So as we come to the end of,
I'm going to take a minute, Lawrence, because there's a question
yeah,
very
please,
close
please.
to my heart.
Yeah, fine.
It says,
please.
what is the practical message you want to give our youth? For me, the moment you say the word youth, I have a soft corner. So, but I think that our young people, are really the hope of the future and of the present. And we need to inculcate entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial inclination in our young people. So even if the Bombay Catholic Sabha others are not looking at doing something for the businessman, but even doing entrepreneurial competitions for colleges, and we have quite a few Catholic colleges, to ask our young people to come up with business ideas. Just yesterday, we were in a discussion with the National Skills Development Council. There are 5 areas: logistics, facility management, healthcare, edtech, online entertainment, that are going to become big. In the areas of studying, again, looking at research, looking at strategy, looking at technology, are going to become very important. So our young people have to be able to be alert, aware of what is happening around. We need to be a lot more serious, and I can look at the people on the screen, and many of you maybe having young kids. We are not getting the youth to attend these sessions. It's not a comment on anyone else. It's just a way that we need to make this palatable to them. Should we do 5-minute small videos for our youth? But we have to get our youth to think entrepreneurship. We need to get our young people, because the best business models, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was in his 20s when he started a company. A lot of the bright young tech entrepreneurs today globally are in their teens or in their 20s. So we are missing something out as a Catholic community by not focusing on building entrepreneurship in our young people. And so to the young people on this group, some of you have turned on your videos to show me you're young, so thank you for that. To please think through opportunities that are being opened up right now in the post-COVID or with COVID era, and challenge yourself. Write to us, write to the Bombay Catholic Sabha. I'm going to put my email on the chat, and we would love to find a way to encourage you going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Roshan. So for the participants, we will be sharing the YouTube version of this session maybe tomorrow on the BCS family group. Some of you can contact me directly if you want that, for not on the group. So as we come to the end of this wonderful session, I would like to particularly thank and appreciate Coach Raymond D'Souza and Mr. Roshan Braganza for being with us this evening. Your session provided us valuable insights in the area of entrepreneurship. Your command over the topic was extraordinary, and your session was well received. Thank you again for inspiring us. I would also like to thank my team and all those who helped me organize this webinar, particularly Advocate Rafael for his motivation. I thank my colleagues, Vice President Bento, Adrian, Alvin, Alexio, and the other members of the team. I must not forget to thank the participants. We had a house full. 100 was the limit, and at one point, and most of the time, we had 100 participants. So thank you for making this event a success. And I look forward to meeting you all. And I also look forward to hosting Coach Raymond and Roshan again in our future webinars. Till then, be healthy and be safe. Thank you.
Okay, as a concluding thing, let me thank my two colleagues, Raymond in Dimensions and Christian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Royston in Social Apostolate, When I spoke to them, they very graciously agreed to come for this webinar and make the presentation. I'm very happy. There are quite a lot of young people who are watching this presentation. And as Royston said, Bombay Catholic Sabha can take it forward if there are interested people who can give us the feedback of their inclination to be entrepreneurs. We can develop a group, and we can try and motivate them or inculcate or give them better opportunities to develop their talents in entrepreneurship. That's an assurance, and we will certainly work with the archdiocese and archdiocese and take it forward with the assistance of Royston to the cardinal. Thank you.